Hi, welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. Oh, I got a frog in my throat. I was thinking today some of the great, well, often catastrophic things that happen to the world and the way that we view them. And one of the things that the Jewish race will never allow us to forget, quite rightly, is the Holocaust. Now, there'll be many historical ways of looking at what happened in the Holocaust, but as a musician and an artist, I have my own way of looking at things and what the loss of a whole nation would have been in the case of the Jewish people. Hitler had this idea that if he just took out the entire Jewish race, then the world would be a better place. And I'm just looking at, I mean, we all know that Hitler was a very, very bad man. We all know that. And there are still Jewish people who are living right now, probably towards the end of their lives, that have some memory in some way of the Holocaust and probably what it cost them in terms of their family. And the way that I've been looking at it lately is because of some of my favourite artists, performers, and I'm looking at them and I'm thinking what the world would be like if they were not here. Now, a friend of mine who actually didn't like Jews very much at all, but he said that the Jewish people had more genius or geniuses per capita than any other race, and I'm ready to believe that. When I was in the army, I was in a band. I was a musician in the army for the whole 8.5 years that I was in. Never fired a rifle, never fired a gun, never did any basic training, was never ever a soldier. I was a musician. I went in when I was 15, and right until the end of that time I was a musician. So what was the effect on me at that time in music of the Jewish people, Jewish talent? Boy, it is endless. Without going into who the composers are, I do believe I'm correct in thinking that almost every musical that we drew on for our program when we did light music concerts, we went out as a band, as a regimental band, and we did concerts. I was in several bands. And I'm just looking at all of just the ones that I can remember, but these fabulous musicals that were penned mostly for the most part by Jews. I'm looking at a little list that I made, just knocked this up. I didn't go to Wikipedia, just from what I remember. But you had Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, Oklahoma. Maybe some of these are before your time, but you're still listening to some of the music. Oklahoma, Sound of Music, West Side Story. Now, the West Side Story was a defining piece of music for me. Leonard Bernstein, and I actually saw Leonard Bernstein in concert with the Boston Phil in London. They came to London, and I was snuck in by a friend of mine who was heavily involved with the education system and was part of a group that were accompanying a huge number of schooled kids who were going to the Albert Hall, and we were going to see the Boston Phil. Boston Phil, one of the few orchestras where the guys in the band, the musicians in that orchestra, could play swing and jazz as well as classical music. It's sometimes very rare that a classical musician can play music that is swing. Well, anyway, they played West Side Story. I actually wanted to join the orchestra, the pit orchestra that was accompanying West Side Story when it was in London. Unfortunately, I never got to do it, and I would really love to have done that. But anyway, I didn't get it, and that was a big regret for me because it was an extremely challenging piece of music, the whole thing. So, West Side Story, The King and I, Wizard of Oz. Wizard of Oz, just imagine if Hitler had had his way, all of these incredible musical pieces would never have been done. Fiddler on the Roof. I'm really just scraping just the surface to find the kind of things that we would have lost. Just imagine, and I'm sure that you can think of even more. And by the way, I'm not Jewish. Mel Torme, Barbara Streisand, Bette Midler, Marvin Hamlish, Woody Allen, Barry Manilow, Frank Gorshin. You might not know Frank Gorshin. Frank Gorshin was the most incredible impressionist that you could see. He was one of those that could change his face, which some of the later impressionists have been able to do as well, but Mr. Gorshin did it so well. So if you think about it, I mean, John Steinbeck, my favourite writers, these are people that are familiar to me, and I'm sure that everybody that is watching or listening on this can say, oh, well, what about, and I respect what you're saying, I wish you were right here, we could join in. But John Steinbeck, The Grapes of Wrath, East of Eden, some of the most incredible pieces of literature came from John Steinbeck. Joseph Heller, my favourite book possibly of all time, of its kind, Catch-22. His Catch-22 went into the as a known usable catchphrase, no pun intended, that most people don't even know. They know what Catch-22 means, you know, you're screwed whichever way you look at it, and yet they know what it means. So then if you look at performers, just look at the other performers that I thought of there, who actually hid that they were Jewish. At one time, this is ironic because you had Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, couldn't be much more Jewish than that, and they had the big studios, and the big studios were controlled mostly by the Jewish people. So there you had people like, I got Sinatra, always thought that he was Jewish, always looked Jewish to me, Tony Bennett, Dean Martin. They tended to do the Italian thing, where they were actually Italian-American, because it was simply not survival to say that you were part of the Jewish race. And I think that was probably a tie-over from World War II, where the people, as we have started off this chat, suffered so badly. So imagine if we hadn't had these people in our lives. What an enormous loss it would have been. And it seems to me that it's something that is not usually pointed out. Usually we talk about, well, you've got people who were scientists, you've got other people who made had a practical impact on our lives, and if they were not here, then it would have been an incredible loss. But when you think about art, you think about any of the actors that you see on screen, and they are going through these emoting scenes where they're simply showing emotion, and there's no text. There's nobody up there saying, right now I'm feeling very sad, or right now I'm feeling really angry. The music would set that mood, and you would always know what was coming before it ever did, and that was thanks to the incredible musicians that the Jewish nation provided us with. And whether we are aware of it or not, our humour, especially from America, is set by the Jewish look on things. And it's so easy to forget this and take it for granted. And I have to admit that I never do. Every time I say the name John Steinbeck, I know I'm speaking of a Jewish man. And he had an incredible effect on me. I have to admit, I wept through most of the Grapes of Wrath, East of Eden, how he put into words what was being felt then. And these are, just because these writers are Jewish doesn't mean that they write about all things Jewish, like the Fiddler on the Roof. Well, I write about what I know. No, they knew about life and knew how to express this incredible concern about things that the people of the earth people, are capable of wreaking on them. I remember a friend of mine in the UK, a singer that I used to have him in my band, and he happened to be at the club one night, and he was a good singer, and he was very much in the Sinatra vein, and he was asked along to a party to form a little band and play at a party, and he went along there, and lo and behold, his dream come true. Frank Sinatra was there, and he heard Frank Sinatra say, oops, had a little brownout then. He heard Frank Sinatra, when Frank Sinatra was told, we've got musicians coming. Frank Sinatra said, oh, musicians, great, they're better than earth people. See, I count that as kind of like a Jewish kind of look on things. So you have all of these things, and what Hitler did has been repeated in history. In various places, dictators have realized that the big danger to their rule is in the musicians and the artists and the intellectuals. And what they do is, in Cambodia, you might remember historically, in Cambodia, I think it was Cambodia, you had the killing fields. Pol Pot rounded up anybody who had half a brain cell working and put them out in the fields, and eventually killed so many of them. And Hitler burned books. This suppression of artistic people, it's not just about the Jews, it's about artistic people. But I was just thinking in this particular case of what an enormous loss it would be if we never had Jewish people in our lives. Whether you even know someone who is Jewish or not is unimportant. To be aware of what an enormous loss it would have been is, I think, important. So that's what my little thing was, what the effect would be. What did I write here as a title? It said Jews and their influence on the world, and it would have been great, wouldn't it? This is a foreigner in the Philippines. Please like, comment and share, because we are trying to make 12,000 subscribers by the end of this month. So if you share and somebody sees one of our videos, any of our videos, and likes them, they may indeed subscribe. So we're looking for 12,000 subscribers by the end of this month. Please help. Bye for now.